Landuse, Jay Sweat. Jay's with the Office of Economic Development within the Department of Defense. And I'd like to talk tonight about the joint land use study that we're proposing for Fort Indiantown Gap and the surrounding municipalities. I'll give a real brief intro, a little bit of history as far as how we've gotten to this evening, and then Jay's going to give you an overview of the program. Actually, about a year and a half ago is when Jay initially contacted us. Jamie Walgamuth and I, as well as Julie Cheney in my office, sat down with Jay and talked about a joint land use study. And essentially a joint land use study looks at the compatibility between the land uses, both existing and future, at Fort Indiantown Gap and the adjacent municipalities. What do their comprehensive plans say? What do their projected land uses look like? And how do the two of them mesh together? And we came to the commissioners, Jay and I did, back in January of 2011. And essentially we asked for permission, for the commissioners' permission, to go out and talk to the local stakeholders. And we were granted that permission, and in February of last year we went out and talked to representatives of the local municipality as well as large landowners in the area of Fort Indiantown Gap, just to see what their thoughts on the study were, and moving forward, what kind of input would they like to have in the process. Essentially, we were I wouldn't say welcomed with open arms. Nobody objected. Nobody jumped up and down and said we have to do this or we shouldn't do this. They pretty much wanted to listen to what we had to offer and what the study was all about. And for a number of different reasons, during the course of last year, we didn't come back to the commissioners to move forward with the study, not the least of which was the flooding we had at the end of last year. That just basically consumed my staff for the last quarter of the year. So essentially we're here tonight to talk to you and ask for your permission to move forward with the joint land use study. And at this point I'd like to turn it over to Jay and have him just give you an overview of what this program's all about.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Board, for the opportunity to again address this board. It was about a year ago that we came out and provided some background on a program that my office administers. We've done a number of these across the country. I was at Fort AP Hill on Monday in a similar setting to discuss the way ahead for Fort AP Hill. I've got a number of these joint land use studies in my portfolio: Air Force bases, Army bases, and one Navy base in Texas. So, and the process involves, the study itself is basically a planning tool for the local communities and for the military department as they make decisions and consider future growth, future development, zoning, comprehensive planning. On the military side, there's going to be future missions. There's going to be a lot of different changes coming down the pike here as far as the military, which was just recently announced by Secretary Panetta. So there's a lot of opportunities, I think, out there. I think FIG is positioned very well to look at the potential for some future missions. So I think the timing on this joint land use study process is ideal. Our budget is sound. I know you had the issues with the weather last year, so Chris had mentioned that's why we'd pushed this off a little bit. New members of the board wanted to just come back and give you an opportunity to ask what questions you have. The installation was nominated by the Army for a joint land use study, and we've been going back and forth, and we've been discussing this for a little while now. We're finally ready to move forward. We've got a draft RFP scope of work that we've been looking on. We've had some input from Dauphin County. The folks out at FIG are looking at it right now. So I think we've got something that looks pretty good, something that would likely come back to this board sometime in the future to get your approval or to get your comments on it. Once we collectively are comfortable with an RFP, a scope of work, we would then put that out to bid. Consultants would bid on that. We have a committee in place to review those bids, make a selection at some point, move ahead with the study. There's likely two groups involved. You have an executive committee, which is typically made up of elected officials, policymakers, and a working group. Folks like Chris and his staff that would work with that consultant to gather data, gather mapping information, and work with the other communities and work with the Army to provide these consultants with the best available information as they move forward with the joint land use study.
And that would be our match to this study.
That could be, absolutely. With that, the budget on this is the federal government will pay 90 cents on the dollar for a joint land use study. The 10% non-federal match would be shared between the communities involved. It can be a cash match of 10%, or it can be the time that staff puts into providing information. Study typically anywhere from 175,000 to 250 to 3, depending on the complexity, depending on the size of the installation, depending on the number of communities involved, depending upon the type of individualized requests or assistance that the communities make to a consultant. There's a number of different things that we can do. That's why there's a wider range of I would work with your staff on that, sir. We're at nobody's pace here, really. We're gonna come up with a good RFP that we're comfortable with. Chris, if you want to address that.
I think Jay and I talked, and the whole process, start to finish, from the time that we get to hiring a consultant, if we have the ability to move forward, until the completion of the study is 6 to 8 months. We don't want to let it drag on. We want to get through the process and get the plan in place as quickly as possible.
You indicated that you've been through a number of these. What are the expected outcomes or the benefits, the mutual benefits that come out of a process like this?
The best thing I love about this program is that no two joint land use studies are the same. No two communities that I've worked with are the same. So what comes out of this for Lebanon may not be what comes out of it for Dauphin, or what comes out of it for the Army. What that consultant would do would be to work with you, work with your staff, look at your existing zoning, your existing comprehensive planning materials, look at the demographics in the area, look at what could be coming down the pike in terms of future missions at the Gap, run some models, see what's there now, take a look at redevelopment potential in the future, and then make some educated guesses, if you will, as to what we could look at here 1 year from now, or 15 or 20 years from now. So it's hard for me to answer at this point.
Chris, did you have a comment?
I can just give you a real quick example. Is I know the lights at the casino and the horse racing track in Dauphin County cause a lot of havoc with the night vision training that they do at the Fort Indiantown Gap. So that's the kind of issue that we need to identify, and how do we let the community grow and develop while we're still maintaining a safe environment for the base to do what they need to do.
They talked about gating the gap. Is that part of this study as well?
Yes, ma'am. You bring in a consultant, and what they would do, they would like to come out and they will meet with you, and they want to talk to you, and they want to understand what your concerns are, what your questions are, what do you think we need to focus on.
Yes, I did have a question. I'm thinking about the timing of these two projects, EMA and also the Fort Indiantown Gap study. Would we be putting demands on perhaps GIS or anything at the same time? Is that anything that we would be accessing? I mean, do you understand my question?
What we could do is we could coordinate with planning and ensure that if we have to talk to GIS or anybody like that, we would talk to them ahead of when they would. Because it's going to take them 2 to 3 months to get their RFP. We're hoping to start March 1st. So we'll make sure that we speak with you, and if there's any people that we have to talk to, we'll talk to them ahead of time.
I just didn't want to
Yeah,
overlook
that's
the
an excellent
obvious.
point.
Yeah.
So we'll knock that out ahead of time and get that done.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, we
Wonderful.
will be talking to GIS, so that's a great.
Thank you.
to entertain a motion to,
So moved.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, second.
we have a motion and a second to proceed. Are there any further questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.